LUAN Emotional Podcast, conversations for inspiration on the go. We offer on-the-go inspiration because our whole heart is set on beauty and our best bets are set on art. Hi, Claudia. How are you? It's a pleasure to have you here in LUAN Emotional Podcast.
Marion, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to talk to you, to converse about this topic that I want to deepen a little bit more with you.
Amazing. Claudia has today an amazing topic that's very relevant for LUAN Emotional Museum. We're going to cover that in a bit. But before we start, I would like to give a little bit of introduction of who this amazing woman is. So Claudia, she's a functional medicine practitioner. She's a registered dietitian, a world triathlete, an exercise physiologist, and endurance coach. Claudia is moved by holistic well-being and performance. She helps her patients get to the root cause of an illness in order to guide them into becoming well-being agents through her unique take on health as a practical, fun, and essential path towards optimized well-being and performance. Claudia has experience working with patients with thyroid problems such as Hashimoto, hypothyroidism, digestive problems, hormonal imbalances, sugar imbalances, autoimmune diseases, leaky gut, metabolic imbalances, poor performances in sports due to illness or deficiencies, mental health problems, HPA-axis dysregulations, and other conditions that do not support the optimization of health and well-being. She has an amazing track record, and I have personally worked with her, and I think her work is completely amazing. She changed my life. So it's amazing, Claudia, to have you here. And one of the topics that we would like to discuss today is, for LUAN Emotional Museum, emotions are such a crucial part of our well-being, right? And our human experience. We wouldn't be humans if we would not be experiencing emotions, right? And we've covered emotions through different lenses in different podcasts and different content that we have inside LUAN, but we haven't covered the relationship in emotions directly related with our health, specifically our digestive system. What can you tell us about this relationship between emotions and our gut health?
Well, it's actually really, thank you for that introduction. And I just want to say that you're an amazing patient. You're really disciplined. And I love how you see everything really well-rounded. And I think that has helped us to achieve your objectives in your health. So thank you for your trust in that process. I'm getting back to your question. Emotions and microbiota. Who would have thought that there's a huge relationship in between those two different systems? And there's a lot of history about that. And it all started in 1971 in a study with the germ-free mice study. And I just want to, every time someone asks me about the relationship between your gut, your brain, your emotions, your microbiota, I always start telling people about this important research in 1971 about the germ-free mice study. What does that mean? They started to compare a germ-free mice with xenobiotic mice, another type of mice that they were raised more like in earth and dirt. Mm-hmm. And a germ-free mice they were raised in a lab without being exposed to the ambience through dirt. And they started to see that the brain chemistry of the germ-free mice started to work really differently. Their response to stress was way bigger if they compare it to the xenobiotic mice. Mm-hmm. The xenobiotic mice have different stress circuits that help them to be more at ease compared with the germ-free mice. So that was like a huge thing in the community of the gut-brain connection. And it all started between the mice. And actually, in 1998, this researcher called Michael Derstrom, he actually coined the microbiota as your second brain. And everybody started to get a little bit crazy after that information, because the brain, it has a blood-brain barrier, so none of the bacteria could go through the brain. But they didn't know that bacteria in your gut connect and communicate to the brain through the to the vagus nerve, actually, which is a huge nerve that goes from the head to every single organ of your systems. So certain type of bacteria started to produce certain type of molecules that tone the vagus nerve and helped produce certain type of neurotransmitter like serotonin, dopamine, etc. So it was 1971 with that study. Then 1998 with this researcher that coined the microbiota as your second brain. And then in 2004, there was a study. This was really interesting, that major depression in humans was they actually their poop, they actually transplanted poop, fecal matter into rodents, and rodents start to get a little bit depressed. And that was like a huge thing in the scientific community, in the gut brain community. So after that, people started to question what happens if you have a dysbiotic gut. What does a dysbiotic gut mean? When your bacteria, your good bacteria and your bad bacteria are imbalanced. You have a little bit more bad bacteria than good bacteria, and that is a dysbiotic bacteria. So when you have a dysbiotic bacteria, it actually permits in your brain and in your brain chemistry. So that was huge. So if I'm telling you a little bit about the history of the gut-brain connection, there are a lot of studies now that confirm that if your gut, if your microbiota is not doing that well, is not balanced, you will suffer a little bit with imbalanced emotions, like anxiety, depression. Your response to stress would be more acute. So it all started with that. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit of the history.
Of course. No, and that's fascinating. And I think that nowadays we live kind of like this germ-free ambience, right? That we use antibacterial gel, all of the toxins that we might be having in our shampoos, our soaps, cosmetics, maybe makeup or any other thing. We're constantly being bombarded with more toxins, but we are not being, we play less with the earth, with the ground, we work less with the plants or with the animals. So also I think that would be, changing our gut health. And especially, this is a huge topic, right? But especially the foods that we consume and the seeds that those foods have, that is everything, quite processed, has a huge impact on our gut, right? What have you seen, from the past, I don't know, all the processed foods, when did it actually started booming? Maybe 1970s, 1960s, more or less. How has our health declined since we started consuming processed foods?
Well, actually, it was, I know I always go 2 years, but I think this stuff is really cultural and politically, economically influenced. And actually in 1960s, I don't know what president was out there in the US. I think it was Eisenhower. He actually started to have heart problems, and he was talking to a physicist. He was Ansel Keys, I guess. He was like a cardiovascular doctor, and they thought actually that fat was blocking the arteries, and that was making your cholesterol, your bad cholesterol, go up. So it all started through there, that people started to create products, 0% fat, okay, that created a big bowl of snow into creating this type of controversial ingredients, like emulsifiers, different type of artificial coloring, that it helped make a product better, but the product was, or the food was not a food, it was actually a product. So it all started through there, that get out the fat, get out the fat. If you get out the fat, if you take the fat away, what are you going to put inside? So it all started, right, in the 80s with the fat-free, the Atkins diet, everything. When you try to extirpate all the fat in food. And if you go to the 1920s, 30s, 40s, people were cooking with how do you not, it's not pig oil, man, it's manteca de cerdo, which
sí,
you know, or like real butter.
Yeah,
let me say that, real butter. Right? So it all has changed. It all has and it starts always with one person that has an authority in a way. So, and they change how we respond, and people change our guts when it's not the world per se, it's us.
Of course.
No, it's really interesting. Were you, for example, in those types of diets by any chance? I think because I was like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I definitely tried like a 0% fat diet. And I always had digestive problems, but all the time. I was constipated 24/7.
It's terrible. Yeah. I see one of the earliest diets that I did, I think was kind of like the South Beach diet. No? My digestive, system was okay, but my anxiety, was just like, it was like zero sugar whatsoever. No. And it was kind of like doing, I think the concept of dieting eventually I think we've seen that it doesn't work, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar, industry around the world. And we haven't actually seen that there's one diet that fits all, right? We know more or less what are kind of like, the health, kind of like whole food diets, no? That's more kind of like approved, but for some people could be better to do paleo, for other people could be, doing keto diet or any other diet, right? Something that we know for sure is that the less processed the things that we eat, the better, right?
Correct. Oh, that's for sure.
And something that I think is quite fascinating is that, how did we got where we are and what are we going to do about it? Right? From this moment on, I wanted to ask you, what are for example, the implications that you've seen? What emotions are being affected by having dysbiosis or by having, this gut imbalance? We know for sure, and, there's many scientific studies about depression and anxiety. But for example, the other day I read about people that have candida start having low self-esteem. And that really shocked me. How could you have a low self-esteem from a fungi or not that you have living in your digestive system? It's like really incredible that it has that amount of impact in our health.
Yes. And I mean, at the end, we're a bacteria. We're made by a trillion of bacteria. There's 3 more times bacteria than cells in our body. The world was created through a bacteria, through a genotype. So right now, there are 2 types of epidemics: mental health, depression, mostly, and digestive issues epidemics. But if you go to a conservative psychiatrist that maybe he or she hasn't been reading what's out there, they are not gonna relate or vinculate this relationship. And actually in 2013, in the Journal of Biological Psychiatry, they coined the term psychobiotics, like how good bacteria could help actually your psychiatry problems, your mental illnesses. And the problem is this: every time, if you have dysbiosis, if you have candida, which is a yeast, that we only don't have good bacteria, we have yeasts as well. Every time you feed a bad bacteria or you feed a yeast, they produce their own fecal matter. They produce they're human. They're not human organisms, but they are alive. They're an organism, obviously. So every time you give food or feed your candida or your bad bacteria, they're going to produce LPS, which is lipopolysaccharides, which is component that creates inflammation, through the body. And when you have inflammation, you push your body into a fight and flight mode. So that will change your emotions. That will change how you react to anything. in the world. So it provides, that being said, your nervous system is regulated. If you have an irregulated nervous system, if someone comes to you and yells, you're going to respond yelling back. Mm-hmm. If you have a good flora, you're not going to respond yelling back. And if you go back, it's all that you fed the candida, you fed the bad bacteria that produce LPS. LPS produced inflammation. Inflammation made your nervous system unbalanced and irregulated. So if you connect the dots, it's really impressive. And in 2013, the biological psychiatry, mm-hmm. when they found out that certain type of bacteria, good bacteria like Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus, mm-hmm. If you consume supplements, you actually change how you respond to stress. Mm. And the perceived stress after 2 weeks was less. Mm-hmm. And the perceived anxiety emotion was less as well. Mm-hmm. So it was also, everybody started to start to think that if once you go to psychiatrists, instead of them giving you an SSRI, which to up your serotonin, it was a better practice without side effects to give you the psychobiotics. I don't know actually who's actually really practicing that. Like, I don't know anyone in my circle that is practicing it. I don't know. Do you know somebody that is giving probiotics to people who have mental health issues?
I've heard so I have some people that I know that are practicing that in San Francisco, but they're also practicing with other things, and they're using also psilocybin and other different, substances, because they have also research that psilocybin also has antiviral properties. So they're testing, how to cure either mental health imbalances and some different kind of like viral infections through different natural things like probiotics and psilocybin. But for sure, there's lots of data and there's lots of, courses around the world, talking about this important relation on the microbiota and our mental health. For example, I recently read an article that said that, eating sugar actually caused, many mood disorders. And it actually talked about having kind of like this Jekyll and Hyde temperament, meaning kind of like having really highs and really lows, right? And when you ate sugar, and also it has to do because also, sugar, has this vicious circle that you're stressed. No, you eat sugar to calm the stress down, to make you feel a little bit better, right? About the situation you're living or these, emotions that you don't want to, maybe touch or process, right? Then you're feeding, your gut, things that it doesn't need, right? It creates these LPS, right? It creates this, inflammation, and then it gets your body more stressed. And then because you have more stress, then you're going to eat sugar again. And that's kind of like the vicious circle. And that's why we're having this inflammation epidemic around the world, right? It's not, you can see, people, so the inflammation is really visible, right? It's easy to see. And of course, with inflammation, then you have many other chronic illnesses that, are start declining the quality of life that people are having. And it all starts with having access to this kind of foods, but these kind of foods that are processed and that have a lot of sugar and salt and, processed ingredients, also at the same time are quite accessible, and they have a long shelf life. So for our busy lifestyles that we're having nowadays in different parts of the world, in different cities, that everything is more hectic, of course, sometimes it makes more sense maybe to, bring something on your bag that's going to last for, many hours, instead of having a fresh salad that, first of all, in some countries is going to be more expensive, no? And then obviously would have a shorter life than other products. So I think we need to, I don't know if it starts from the consumers, that we need to start raising our voices and we start to make, different choices, or if it starts with taking the information outside, because, there's many, documentaries, Netflix and many others talking about these health epidemics, but our bodies are kind of like hooked to these processed foods.
And the thing, you're raising a really important point right now, because that brings me to the phrasing instant gratification, right? And processed food could be really pushes your instant gratification. It's a vicious cycle, like you said. And the thing is, you probably heard of the study of the marshmallow. Yes. If you give a kid, you give a kid two options, right? Either I give you one marshmallow right now, or give you two marshmallows in 2 or 3 hours. And what they saw as well, I don't know if they have related it to the microbiota and how the microbiota of these children was created, or their biome. But I think there are some studies that people that have a good balance of good bacteria can delay certain types of decisions easier than other people who have an imbalanced bacteria. So as well, it affects your decisions, either if it's a good decision or a bad decision. You know, that's as important as that, because if you think about it, there's a lot of consumption of sugar, okay, and simple carbohydrates like flours, bread, donuts. And how are we deciding, or who is deciding for us? Deciding for us, or bad bacteria deciding for us? If you go like and start to deep in that, you start to think of, oh my gosh, I really have to change I have to restart or reboot my digestive system in order for me to start doing or choosing better in my life. So that impacts what you do and how you do it as well. And that impacts your future decisions.
Totally.
So I think it's a huge thing. And processed goods.
Totally. And that's a very important topic, because most of the times, right, when we want to start, healthy eating, or we want to, change our habits, and then we eventually fail at it, right? The first, kind of like emotions that we start feeling are, guilt, hopelessness, right? This sensation of despair, like, oh man, I need to start again. Why am I not able to take care of my health? And then we kind of like, we start kind of like hurting ourselves, and not, having that, respect and that self-love and that self-compassion, because we think that, the foods that we choose to eat, they only have to do with will. And it doesn't. If you have an imbalanced, gut, eventually you're going to have these uncontrollable cravings for sugar, because that's what the bad bacteria or the bad, yeast as well wants to eat. Right. So it's kind of like if you would have these living organisms that are making the food choices for you, and then you have this kind of like economic system that makes it quite easy and affordable for you to consume these products. Right. And eventually we start feeling, we're having this epidemic of mental illnesses. So it's crazy.
It's really interesting, because our context is making us wired to eat, really, to eat all those types of stuff. And I actually always say that you punish yourself, like you were saying, when you have this uncontrollable craving and you need more willpower in order to control it, but it's actually not willpower. Yeah. It's your gut. It's your unbalanced gut. And I know that a lot of people, when they hear this, they will be like, oh gosh, that makes me more at ease, because it was not, it was your mind telling you to do something, but directed by the gut, not by you and your personality. So it's your cravings are not about willpower and extending or expanding that willpower. It's about creating this balanced gut and healing from the inside.
That's such an important topic. Yeah. And it's important to repeat it again, because, for everyone that's listening right now, maybe you can be beating yourself up for, not following maybe a diet or healthy eating. And sometimes, the decisions that you're making has to do with your gut. So please just have, the time, if possible, if you can afford it, if you have, time for it, but put it in a priority to check on your gut. How is your gut health? How many, the diversity of your gut, the imbalance or the balance that you might have in your gut, because just checking at it and doing something about it can literally change your life. And also,
and actually, yeah. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's really easy to see if your gut is balanced. Yes, maybe you can do testing and it actually really helps, but your body and your stomach is actually in your microbiota, your gut instinct, everything. It's telling you if you eat something and you get inflamed, that's your gut speaking to you. Mm-hmm. If you have an acid reflux, that's your gut speaking to you. If you hear a lot of weird sounds and you have this gastritis, that's your gut telling you something. If you cannot go to the restroom every single day at least once, and you're usually constipated, your gut is telling you something. If you have diarrhea, or you switch in between being constipated and diarrhea, your gut is telling you something. So it's not that hard to identify. The thing is that we're not listening, and we believe that either IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, or IBD, irritable bowel disease, or SIBO, which is bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, or SIFO, which is yeast fungal overgrowth in the small intestine. All of that, with all of those types of diseases or conditions, we think that they just happen to us, but it actually was our decisions, the type of food that we're eating, the vicious cycle, the processed food, and we can control that. Yeah. And we don't need actually a medicine to stop that. Mm-hmm. But we control that with our habits.
Totally. What are for example, the things that we can start doing like right away? Like what are the things you need to remove? What are there's something about kind of like the 4 R's, right? Like remove, restore, replenish.
Yes, and the Institute of Functional Medicine, they work with the 4 R's. In the California Center of Functional Medicine, they work just with 2 R's, mm-hmm. which is eliminate and then refeed the good bacteria. So there's a difference. Refeed
and refeed.
Remove and refeed. Correct. Remove and refeed. So first you have to know what pathogens you have inside of yourself, either if it's a candida, any type of candida, albicans cruzi, or if you have like a bad bacteria, like either E. coli, C. difficile, or salmonella, or other type of bacteria. You have to study your gut a little bit better, no? And then you can remove
with a fecal test, right?
It's with a fecal test, with a stool analysis test. Mm-hmm. First of all, but sometimes you don't even have to go to a stool analysis test, and you can rebalance your bacteria because maybe you don't have a bad bacteria really invading. Mm-hmm. Maybe you just have like a dysbiosis or a flora, which is not well balanced, but you don't have like a pathogenic bacteria really like giving you hard stuff, really giving you hardship. So sometimes it could be a little bit more simple, mm-hmm. and start reducing or eliminating sugar. That could be a first. Mm-hmm. And after like step 2 could be eliminating gluten and dairy. That helps a lot. Intolerances usually make a difference in your gut. And after eliminating these types of that are not helping you, is start feeding your gut with foods that help you. And in 2016, actually in the Journal of Trends of Neuroscience, not gut oriented, but neuroscience, which is it was really like important. There's a study that proved how to manipulate your bacteria gut brain connection through fiber. Okay. And so they, instead of just taking probiotics, you can start taking prebiotics, which is fiber that feeds your good bacteria. So if you feed your good bacteria, that will multiply, or that will make your good bacteria even stronger. Mm-hmm. And there's a saying in the world of the microbiome that a germ kills a germ. Mm. And if there's more good bacteria, they will turn away from they will kill the bad bacteria. If there is more bad bacteria, they will fight the good bacteria. So you need to make the good bacteria stronger. However, you make the good bacteria stronger when you don't have a pathogenic bacteria, like a bad bacteria. So I just want to make that clear. No, because then you give the good bacteria, you feed the bad bacteria. And that is why in functional medicine, you have to remove and then refeed first.
Of course. And most of the times, if you already have, bowel disturbances, also might be good to check for food sensitivities, right? Because most of the time, if you have an unhealthy gut, it's quite probable that you're going to have food sensitivities.
That's for sure. And if you have a lot of food sensitivities, you're going to have leaky gut. Mm-hmm. Which that's the worst problem. And that relates to autoimmune diseases, but we don't even want to go there because that's like that fourth step if you're all the way down there. But people usually ask me, what type of prebiotics are your favorite? Like any type of fiber. And I usually say that garlic and onions are great. They're really easy to get, really use. They have really good prebiotic bacteria. Do you use, or do you tend to use certain type of prebiotic that you like?
Yes, I actually tried this one that's called Thrive. I think there was this conference that we saw each other in this biohacking conference, and they have prebiotics, probiotics, and they also had this kind of something to heal for your leaky gut. So I took those three, and it actually helped a lot. I've been taking, probiotics and prebiotics almost every morning for the past, maybe 3 years. And I've seen that it does have this health impact, right? But I wouldn't say that it's kind of like the only thing, to address. If you don't make the dietary changes, then your body's not going to reduce that stress or that inflammation, right? And something fascinating that I researched is that also these gut imbalance has a lot to do with brain problems, right? And I read that also, for example, candida, when you have a lot of candida overgrowth, kind of like stage 3, stage 4 overgrowth, then you start having the same symptoms as Alzheimer's. And if you have other types of, bad yeast or bad bacteria, you also start having memory problems and feeling that your cognitive abilities are kind of like fading away. And I know for the past maybe 2 months, I've heard so many people say like, oh my God, my memory is so bad. Oh, I can't even remember anything. Oh, I missed this. Oh yes, it's happening a lot, And I wonder, it can't be our age as just that, because I've seen people, in their teens, in their 20s, in their 60s, and they're all saying exactly the same thing. So I'm sure it has to do with this inflammation epidemic that we're seeing, because it's not common for all of, the people that, all of the population to start losing their memory. And it has been like studies show that the memory loss that we're having as human beings, first of all, has to do with the habits. For example, on our mobile phones are a big distressor of that, because, for example, I read this book by Jim Quick called Limitless, and it talks about how we're training our minds to constantly, instead of like before, we used to be in our computer and maybe you can be, doing deep work for 20 minutes, 50 minutes, no? And nowadays you're starting in 5 minutes and then you check and you need to send a message on your WhatsApp, and then you're checking something else and then you continue. And then you're training your mind to constantly get distracted from the from the thing that you're doing. So one thing is behavioral, that yeah, it's true, right? This technology could be making our memory shorter and our attention span shorter. But also, I think that something in the inflammation, in the food that we eat, in the lifestyle, that's also declining that memory.
You nailed it. And I know that I always say there's a study, but I keep reading all the journals to have more information. But there's a study in 2018 that they grab like 40 healthy men, because you in a study, either they grab subjects that they are sick, and it's really different, the conclusions with sick subjects and with healthy subjects. So they grabbed 40 healthy men, and some of them they gave them placebo, and some of them they gave them the psychobiotics, like it was bifidobacterium and lactobacillus, this good bacteria, this probiotics. And they went through they underwent through an intelligence test, through an intelligence test. And the healthy men who were actually taking the good bacteria, the probiotics, the psychobiotics, they improved statistically like 20% better. And so it was a significant improvement in cognitive function and in memory. Imagine that.
70%.
It was
insane.
20%, no, 70%.
20%, sorry.
But yeah, but it's in the study, it's like a lot. 20% is like huge. Even 5% would have been huge. So 20% was like, oh my gosh, so what's happening? And there's another term that they are the scientific community in digestive issues. They are talking about postbiotics. So there's prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. So every time your good bacteria eats its fiber or eats its prebiotic, they secrete short-chain fatty acids. It's called butyrate. Have you heard of butyrate?
Yes.
So the thing was that this man had diverse bacteria, and the diets were normal in a way, but they consume fiber. But because they have better bacteria, they consume fiber, they produce more short-chain fatty acid that improve the cognitive function and memory of them. So for sure, there are a lot of, and with my patients, every time I eliminate or eliminate more than remove, because you don't remove the candida, you eliminate the excess of candida or yeast, their brain fog reduces by 60, 70%.
It's crazy. Tell me about
that. Tell me about how you felt, because we're working on that.
Yeah, I think that the beginning, before we started working together, and why I reached out was because I felt that I was losing my memory completely. And like things that I know it's not kind of like my brain performance per se, kind of like, you know yourself, right? A bit, and you know more or less how you function. And then I was seeing that, I wasn't absolutely remembering anything if I arrived to a meeting and then we, had, specific agreements after the meeting, kind of like I forgot exactly what were like the 3-point agreements, like important stuff like that I was losing, right? And I felt brain fog, and especially I felt a lot of fatigue. So it was like, okay, then I went kind of like to see the doctor, and the doctor was like, okay, well, you have 2 kids, right? Your youngest one is almost a year old. So, it's probably that. And then another doctor is like, oh no. So then you have long COVID. You already got COVID.
They didn't tell me that. That you visit other doctors and we're like, you have a stressful
just
life.
Because kind of like to check, right? So kind of like if there was something, and then the other doctor was like, no, that's long COVID. The thing that you're experiencing that has happened to all my patients that has had COVID. And then I was like, I know myself. I know that this is not COVID. I know that this is not this mommy burnout kind of thing from the first year, because you know yourself. And I already had another son, right? My firstborn. So I know that eventually, after you, kind of like leave postpartum, you kind of like start feeling like yourself. And I wasn't feeling like myself, no? So when I started working with you, and I think something really important, like the most significant effects that I've seen, first of all, and when I was like really surprised, I felt a higher sense of confidence. That was like, kind of like number one, because I felt, well, first of all, kind of like I felt that my brain was, working again. And the second one, I think that it really has that effect in your self-esteem, right? Second one, I felt better my memory. I think I'm not where I am, also where I'm usually am, but it's way better, right? And we've only working on this for the past 2 months, no? And the third one, I felt like the inflammation kind of like in my face, especially like under the eyes or like around lips, or, like inflammation, especially on my tummy, that has, changed a lot. Another one that I felt is more kind of like restorative sleep. And no, it's everything because of my gut. And I would say another one that I've felt is kind of like having a clearer ability to feel my emotions, right? Kind of like before, it was just kind of like, I know that something is happening emotionally, and I know that it's uncomfortable, but I can actually kind of like read quite easily what it is. And right now it's kind of like easy. Okay, that might be resentment, that might be despair, that might be hopelessness, that might be joyfulness, that might be, being grateful, that might be, any other emotion and experience that you can, coin. So I felt that kind of like sensitivity. So I felt those are these 6 points in the past 2 months.
That's amazing. And it's all through the gut. Isn't it amazing? I mean, at the end, it's the biggest organ. Our big intestine is like 7 meters.
Yeah.
I don't know what's that in feet and inches, but it's too long, man, for ourselves.
Yeah. And I think this information is so valuable, and I think it should be kind of like mandatory to check our guts. Maybe, I don't know, you can tell us like once a year, once every 2 years, I don't know, but like, to be testing or like checking our gut health often, right? So when we are kind of like getting this balance to see, where and we can address it fast.
Where to start.
Exactly.
Yes. And that's actually an awesome recommendation, because I don't feel good. I don't feel myself. Where to start? Don't go to, maybe not, it's not an antidepressant. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's not an antidepressant. Maybe it's not a medicine. No, it's check your gut first. So that's a good way to start for sure. Actually, about like 2-3 weeks ago, I got a bad bacteria on my throat. I got pharyngitis. It was like a streptococcus, which is so, and I don't get sick because of my lifestyle, but sometimes it comes by, right? And I don't want to take antibiotics, because at the end, there's a lot of side effects and it destroys your gut. Yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna get past this. I'm gonna endure it. I'm gonna endure the temperature. I was already in 30.8 of temperature, and I was sweating. I was feeling really bad. And I saw my throat and it was white. So I'm like, this is definitely a bacteria. I need to take an antibiotic. Okay, I'm going to restore my gut afterwards. It's okay. I was mad because I don't like antibiotics. And after I took it, and for 2 to 3 weeks, people were telling me, how are you? And I just wanted to respond irregulated. My nervous system was not myself. Yeah. I was a little bit more responsive to stress. Everything was making me a little bit more anxious. And I'm usually like a Zen person. I'm like really at ease all the time. I'm well regulated. And I was really at awe of that decision, how it made me feel for about 2 to 3 weeks that I started my intestinal protocol I usually give my patients to eliminate, because maybe the antibiotic gave me a little bit of candida, obviously. So I had to work through the gut to regulate myself again. And I was like, oh gosh, even it happens.
Wow.
And I was really impacted on how a regulated gut and balanced gut regulates
everything else. Totally. And I think that, well, I heard from the scientific community that new studies are going to come out soon about how bad antibiotics are. I don't know exactly, the whole details, but what I've heard is that new studies are coming from, I think, from Arizona, from the University of Arizona, and there are also other ones coming from Europe. And it's not that they're banning kind of like antibiotics, of course not, because obviously they save our lives and, we owe them so much in our human evolution. And of course, they have done us, great good, but they're going to be way more regulated in the sense that, it's not, it won't be that easy to, give anybody an antibiotic so fast, kind of like, okay, so maybe you have a little bit of fever, let's have antibiotics, because the side effect that taking that antibiotic is going to have on your gut health for the next weeks is going to have a huge impact. And for some people, it's not even weeks, it could be years, right? If that, gut imbalance gets, worse and worse, because then it gets, it kills the good bacteria, and then you're more prone to illnesses. And then, we start in this also, vicious cycle that is nonstop. And I think that all of this information, Clau, and I think that's a lot of responsibility of the work that you do, no, and many health practitioners like you have, is, being able to democratize this information to make it accessible for more people around the world to reach at it. Because if it can change our anxiety, if it can change our depression, if it can change our self-esteem, if it can change or regulate or make better our nervous system, imagine the quality of life that people around the world could be having by accessing this kind of information.
And I'm really excited to see the studies because because antibiotics, penicillin, Alexander Fleming in 1917, I don't know when it was that he discovered penicillin. It was such a groundbreaking study that nobody paid attention to the side effects because it was saving lives, So it was saving life, that the side effects, we don't care. And when I had COVID, my doctor that was seeing me, he was like, take an antibiotic. I'm like, it's a virus. Why am I going to take an antibiotic? Because it's not a bacteria. Because you're more susceptible and then you can cut a bacteria, but I'm not cutting the bacteria. It's a virus. Why am I going to do that to my God? It was a fight. No, and he was like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, I know what an antibiotic does to my gut. I don't want to have bad self-esteem for 2 months. I don't want to be regulated. I don't want my levels of stress to increase. So we need more regulation on antibiotics for sure. And sometimes the scientific community research have to put the study in our faces in order for us to rationally be like, okay, we have to do that.
Yeah,
we have to be careful, because when was it? I'm gonna go like 2,000 years ago, in the plague in Athens, where there was a war in Sparta. There was a huge plague, and a lot of people died because it was a bacteria. But the people who didn't die, they had an adaptive immune response that their own body protected them. Wow. So we have forgotten our adaptive immunity. And I know that we live in a world that it's really different. About 2,000 years ago, I know that we're exposed to other types of toxicity and it's not helping. But we have that adaptive immunity and we've forgotten about that as well.
Totally. And we have all of these, we have this human body that, it's doing this trillion processes every minute, right, in front of us, and this miraculous machine that we inhabit in. And sometimes we forget kind of like the power that we have with it, no? And more, I'm happy that nowadays we're seeing, more of these kind of like, influencers and, people having these new theories. For example, the Iceman, right? That, talks about why we are not using the temperature regulating system that we have. And because we're using hats and we're using, gloves and we're using jackets, and, the instant that, the weather goes down by 5 degrees Celsius, right? Eventually we're not using, and we're kind of like disturbing the natural essence that those systems that we're built with has. And that's why, getting ourselves exposed to, for example, to cold, that actually helps a lot, and to bring our bodies into more, alkaline states. If your body is alkaline then there's no space for disease, right? If you have a good gut, there's no space for disease, right? Because it helps with inflammation. So we have that naturally. We just have gotten inside the way because of the way our civilization and our culture works right now. But it's not too late to have that U-turn, and especially relating to our emotions and relating to our self-esteem and relating to this anxiety and depression epidemic that we're living right now, because the change, it's in front of us. It's in our hands. The change to start feeling better starts there in our gut, in taking care and taking responsibility of the things that we can start working on. No?
Yeah, I'm there with you totally, for sure. There's actually a doctor, her name is Sarah Campbell. She says that this ease is simply pointing us to places in which we are not free.
Yeah.
When I read that quote, I was really moved because when we have a disease, basically we're not free in a way. And there's another quote that brings me to another quote from Dr. Joe Kahn. He's a cardiologist. He says, when you have good health, you have 10,000 dreams. And when you don't have good health, you just have one dream.
Mm-hmm.
You have good health. And that brings me to what you're saying. That at the end, it's our decision. At the end, we've been influenced a lot. I wish through this talk, people can get their hand on their decisions and take care, have the responsibility to take care of the body, and also to filter information. It's really important because there's a lot of information right now. And part of my job, I write this newsletter every single week because I want to help people filter their information, have their own critique.
Yeah.
And if they read something, say, no, I know that this is not for me because I know this information. Because especially right here in Mexico, I don't know if that happens in other countries, maybe in India, maybe in, I don't know, that the doctor is the authority and whatever he or she says, you have to do. And we forget to trust ourselves, to trust our gut instinct in a way, to trust what we have read, which is evidence-based through good information. And yeah, at the end, this ease is pointing out where we're not free, and it's our decision.
Totally. That thing about kind of like having that own responsibility and having your own take on your health. I think that has happened a lot to me, for example, with my kids, right? When they've gotten sick, for example, I had, 2 episodes that, the pediatrician was sending us, some stuff, like specific antibiotic or something. And the homeopathic doctor was telling me, for example, there was a specific case. Both of them, they were telling me, this is viral, it will go away. And I was here with my kid having this terrible fever. And I was like, no, this is not viral. This is bacteria. How do I know? I don't know. I just know, right? And the things that they were, recommending me to give him, I was like, no, I'm not going to buy them because I know that this is bacteria, no? And I think that it's also always important to listen to yourself. Maybe at some point we're gonna, make the wrong decisions, but sometimes we're going to coin them, and it's important to at least do the exercise and start learning and start, getting in touch with our decision process and being responsible for our decisions and start kind of like learning for ourselves, right? How to make the right decisions, because all the day, every second of our day, we're making decisions. It's the moment that we wake up, if we wake up to work out or not, if we wake up to meditate, if we are going late to work or whatever we're doing, we're making decisions all the time. But most of the times they're not conscious decisions. So it's important.
Yeah. And I want to get back to what you were saying while you were experimenting, like the die-off of the candida and rebooting your digestive system, that you started to confine more or understand and coin your different type of emotions. So, and that helped you listen better to your gut instinct.
Exactly.
I actually, so again, when you're lost, when you are not connecting that mind body communication, start with your gut. I just took a course in MIT of neuroscience for business. And they actually talked about the psychobiotic revolution. It was super interesting that MIT was connecting this because they're like so scientific, rational, and they were actually talking about interoception, which is a concept on how to connect with your gut instinct. And I was like, how can you connect to your gut instinct if your gut is not well balanced? And you proved that point to me right now when you were telling me about the die-off of their candidate and how you were connecting with yourself better.
Of course, it opens this perception to, feel or to be more sensitive to read your emotions instead of just feeling them like this wave of emotions being, thrown at you. Eventually you can kind of like, be releasing the knots little by little and, seeing the parts of your emotions with more sensitivity, right? There's this book about Brené Brown that's called The Atlas of the Heart, which is an amazing book. And she talks about that she did a lot of, she interviewed many people about what were the main emotions that they were feeling. And most of the people responded only three emotions. That's it. Imagine like our whole human experience being coined in three emotions. That was happiness, sadness, and anger. And then her book actually talks about 87 types of emotions and experiences. And she uses the word experiences because not all of them are emotions. And she talks about, wonder and awe and, joyfulness and resentment and, bittersweet and, many other states that we experience as human beings. So I think like recovering my gut has given me that sensitivity to feel those emotions better than before. I think I was, if I was in that study before I got my gut regulated, I would be like those people that responded with only three emotions. And now I can feel, many more.
I'm a huge fan of Brené Brown. I also have Atlas of the Heart. And I saw her interview, I think it was an HBO Max. It was like a 4-series thingy that she says that people can just say if they're sad, angry, or happy, when there's, like you said before, despair, fear, insecurity, a lot of things. 87, it's huge. And that reminds me of, there's a doctor, a chiropractor. I'm actually certifying myself in his methodology. It's called foundational training. It's getting in touch more with your muscles that are not strong, to learn to listen to it and know how to work the type of muscles that they're not strong or they're not supporting your body right now, which is like keeping in your body even more, right? Yes. And he says people who know how to translate symptoms will be healthier and optimized. And that happens with emotions as well. With physical symptoms and emotions. Imagine a world when someone can tell you exactly their physical symptoms and exactly their emotions. That's emotional and physical intelligence at its best. Totally. That's optimized. That's Zen. I don't know. That would be great.
See, it's just kind of like having this relationship with each other with assertiveness, with complete honesty, right? Sometimes irony and sarcasm, for example, sometimes they hide kind of like honesty, right? So it's kind of like a way to show that passive aggressiveness without honestly kind of like addressing the honesty that you need to have with that person, right? So I think it would create a more peaceful world, right? If people would be.
No, I think our empathetic skills will definitely be developed for sure.
Yeah. Totally.
That's so interesting.
This is amazing, Claudia. This talk has been fascinating. And before we close, I would like to ask you a few questions. There's 10 questions. The idea would be for you to respond in one word or a few words. Just try to keep it short, no? But it's the first thing that comes to mind, okay? What is art for you?
Ready.
Amazing. What is art?
Self-expression.
Amazing. Your favorite author?
Oof, that's a tough one. I know that it's gonna be super weird from me to answer this, but Jane Austen.
Mm-hmm. An advice that changed your life?
We're not disposable.
The best quality in humans?
Curiosity.
I love that. A book that you recommend?
How to Do the Work from Dr. Nicole LePera.
What's it about?
It's actually how to do your emotional work and connect your body, your physiological symptoms and your emotional symptoms and bring them together. She's called actually the holistic psychologist on Instagram. I don't know if you've heard of her. And I really does believe that she does a really good work with that book.
That's amazing. Amazing. What feeds your soul?
Good, insightful conversations.
The most pressing issue for humanities, or one of the most pressing issues for humanity?
To be scared of doing the work.
Mm-hmm. If humans can agree on this, you will be very happy.
I love that question. I haven't thought of that. What if everything would agree? That I have this theme these days that men and women, we are not created equal, but we deserve to be treated equally. So if we agree on that, I think it would be a much better world.
We'll have an amazing world. Totally.
We could make ourselves stronger. So that would be great.
Totally. What would you like to scream to the whole world?
It's okay to not be okay.
I like that one. And the last one, what is it that you have lived that no one could miss experiencing?
Okay, again.
What is it that you have lived and that no one could miss experiencing?
That's a good one, man. I'm digging deep in my cognitive reserve. This is gonna sound really weird, but I work in a dolphinarium. Is that what you call it? Dolphinarium?
Yes.
You work with dolphins and sea lions. And I worked for that for like 4 months. I was teaching, it was when dolphins give certain type of energy to kids that have, are different. And working with dolphins and working with sea lions, even though they're animals, and the power that they have and the power we have to connect with animals, I think I would love for everybody to experience that amazing connection that we have. I actually thought that I was talking to a sea lion because I was more in charge of the sea lions for a while. And it's amazing. It's amazing to work with animals that way.
Totally, because that human connection expands to different species. And that feels quite fulfilling, right?
Yes. Amazing.
Totally. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Clau. Thanks so much for your wisdom, for your experience, for sharing all of this valuable information with me, with us, with the LUAN community. It has been really valuable, everything that you shared. And thank you so much for sharing, your knowledge with us, for being so generous to, sharing the lessons that you've learned around your path. So thank you.
Marion, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a blast, man. Your knowledge, your insightful information, how you view the world, what you read, I think that made an awesome conversation. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Want to keep the conversation going? LUAN, the world's first emotional museum, designed a global online experience to inspire and explore. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Telegram, and visit our site at luanmuseum.com to engage creatively.